We have two more incredible sessions in our lineup for today. So thank you for all of those of you who have been with us since 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time. So we're just rounding out here. So yeah, I'm gonna share my screen real quick and introduce our next speaker, Sandy Rees, who is the founder and chief encouragement officer at Get Fully Funded. So yeah, she instructs and helps nonprofits run their fundraising in a way that's easy and predictable. So doing that by helping students find their ideal donors and connecting through authentic messaging and relationship building, which really stays in line with what we've been learning all throughout today's sessions. So it's my pleasure to welcome Sandy, and I'm just going to turn it over to you then.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I know that there's so many other things you could be doing with your afternoon, so I'm really excited to get to spend some time with you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Hopefully you can see those slides. And we are going to talk about not only how to get people excited about your Giving Tuesday campaign, but do it do it in a way that's sustainable long term. So let's start here. Giving Tuesday is not so much a competition for money as much as it's a competition for attention. You're actually competing for people's attention. You're competing for the emotional attraction. And one of the ways that you can sort of stand out from the crowd is by using something that we call a core number. So I want to teach you today what a core number is and how you can use it to inspire more donations for your Giving Tuesday campaign and also everything else that you do. Now I see some of my folks in the audience and just want to say, hey, you guys, for those of you who are new, I'm Sandy Rees. I'm a coach and consultant. I've been doing this for a long time, like 25 some odd years. I love sharing what I know. My learning curve for fundraising was pretty long and pretty steep, and I don't want that for you. I want to show you some shortcuts and some tricks. So let's get right to it, shall we? All right, so here's what I'm going to cover in a very short period of time. We're going to talk about a core number, how to calculate it. You're going to love this. Thank you guys for typing in the chat. You're so excited. This is going to be great. How to use this in your ask to set your donors' heart on fire, especially for Giving Tuesday. This technique just works. You're going to love this. And then I want to show you some real world examples because if you're like me, I'm all about the practical tactical. Like, show me something that works, and then I can figure out how to apply it to my own organization. So that's where we're going today. Hopefully, you are excited. Now, here's where I want to start. This is pretty much everything that I do when it comes to fundraising, and that is when you raise more money, you can change more lives. Your nonprofit exists or your NGO, your organization is here to make a difference in the world. You are not here for status quo. You are not here to be mediocre. You are here to make a difference. You're here to change lives, save lives, protect the planet, whatever your organization's mission does. When you raise more money, you can do more of that. So let's be smart and strategic about how we raise money so you can do more of that. Yeah? Yeah. If you're like me, I'm pretty passionate about this stuff. It seems so simple. What could possibly go wrong when it comes to fundraising, right? Yeah. Most nonprofit asks, so whether we're talking about Giving Tuesday or frankly anything else, they're boring, they're vague, they're inwardly focused, and they're no different than what anybody else's ask is. So remember, we're not necessarily competing for money, we're competing for attention, we're competing for the emotional tug. So we got to find a way to excite donors so that we're not leaving them feeling, "Meh, meh." That's not going to get you anywhere. So what works? Here's what works, my friend. All right, if you can see the slide, I have a picture here, and some of you may recognize this restaurant. Anybody ever been there? This used to be my absolute favorite restaurant. If you said Cheesecake Factory, way to go, Christina. You are correct. This is Cheesecake Factory. In the US, I have been to so many Cheesecake Factory locations, it's not even funny, like, probably a couple of dozen different ones, and every single one I go to, they have this case in the front. And you know why they do that? Why do they put these right up front? So that when you walk in and you're waiting for your table, you go over and you pick out your dessert before you pick out anything else. And the only thing that's going to tear you away from that case is when they tell you your table is ready. Why do they do that? They lead with something delicious. They lead with something delicious. And you need to do that too. If you're going to stand out on Giving Tuesday, you have to lead with something delicious. So that means you can't say, we're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. For those in the States, like most people don't even know what that means. And yet somehow we feel compelled to use that. That's not delicious. That's your tax status, not a reason to give. So we have to figure out the right words to inspire somebody to give. And it's not as hard as you think, but here's the warning that I want to share. Don't make donors burn calories trying to figure out what you want them to do. So if you're using a vague ask, they're burning calories trying to figure out how their money is going to make a difference. If you're not asking at all, that's a huge problem. And I've seen people try to do that on Giving Tuesday. They usually try to say, hey, um, thank you for all your past support. We love your help again. And it's almost like they're doing the little, orphan Oliver going, please, just can you give some more, please? That doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. We've got to make it super easy for people to give. So here's a couple of things that get in the way, and I want to point these out so that you can identify if you've done these, and if you have, let it go so we can get on and do what does work. Self-centeredness. So watch out when you're asking for money that you don't say we, us, us. We. It's like some kind of weird fundraising French. We have this many programs. We do this. We're certified. We've been around since 2002. Like none of that is inspiring to your donor. What they want to know about is how are you making a difference and how can they be a part of that? So you got to let go of all that. They do not want to fund your existence. They want to fund your impact. So and this one's important, y'all, when you say, hey, on Giving Tuesday, our goal is $10,000, please give. There's nothing exciting about that. Even if you say, hey, $10,000 is going to help us keep providing services, that's still not exciting. That's more about funding your existence. And when you flip and start talking to people about how their donation is going to change a life or save a life, now we're on to something. And that's where the core number is going to come in just a second. You also want to be really careful about using jargon breath. I think this is really funny, and I want to share this with you. Your message and your ask should set people's hair and heart on fire. Jargon is a flame retardant. I heard Tom Ahern say that one time, and I thought it was brilliant. So you got to be really careful about using words that the average person wouldn't understand, like at-risk population or continuum of service, or you know what your acronyms and your jargon is in your specific niche. You can't use that with donors. So what can we do? We're going to use a core number because, folks, it just works. A core number, are you ready? We are getting right into it here. We are 10 minutes in, and here's the meat. Your core number is an expression of what it costs you to deliver a unit of service. Okay, what it costs you to deliver a unit of service. So we have to figure out a couple of things. First of all, what is your unit of service? And then we have to think about and do a little math here. Yes, I know on the East Coast, it's after lunch, and we did not forewarn you we were going to do math, but here we go. Here's how it works. This is the formula that you see on screen. So you can do a little screenshot here. And I also have a little surprise for you later. I've got a couple of resources that are going to make this easy for you. You're going to love this. All right. So what you do is you pick a time frame, either the last 12 months or last calendar year. That will work. And you look at your total expenses for your organization, not just what you spent to deliver a program, but you like pull your complete financials. You look at the total expenses. Then you have to decide what your unit of service is. Vanessa, I love that. She's already figured out her core number. I love that. Pop it in the chat and let me see. So your unit of service is going to be breaking down what you do into the smallest little piece. So for example, if your organization is a food pantry, then it might be one box for one family, or it might be one meal for one person. So you start looking at what your organization does and you break it down into the smallest pieces. And then you're going to do just a little division. You take your total expenses, divide that by your total units of service. That's going to give you your core number. Let me show you a couple of examples because I know math is not everybody's strong suit. And I'm going to be really honest. I have a minor in math from college, but still, uh, math and fundraising was a little bit different for me. And it took me a minute to kind of catch on to it. All right. So here's an example of an animal shelter. You'll see this on screen. So we're going to divide the total expenses, which in this example is $95,000. They had an estimated total dogs adopted out of 1,500. So we're just going to divide 95,000 by 1,500 and we get 63.33 per dog. Now, if you're like me, I look at that and I'm like, okay, that seems kind of high. I don't know if I want to ask somebody to do 63.33 per dog. I'd really like it to be a lot lower. So we have to say, okay, how many days does that dog stay there at that shelter? Well, if we find out that each dog stays on average 14 days, then we can take that 63.33 divided by 14. Now we get $4.52 a day. That is a very small amount. That is a very easy yes for a lot of people. So there you can say, instead of our goal is $10,000 on Giving Tuesday, please give, you can say, our goal is to provide 5,000 days of care for homeless animals in our community. For $4.52, you can provide a day of care for a homeless dog. Click here to give. Now, there's several things that happen when you do that. Number one, you are connecting the dots for your donor. They don't wonder anymore how their donation is going to make a difference. You've just laid it out for them. $4.52 is going to provide a day of care. Now, the most popular question you might get is, really, how can you do that? There's a rescue mission in my area that provides food for like $1.52 a meal, and I'm always scratching my head going, how do they do that? Well, since I work in nonprofit, I understand that you get a lot of donations and you get opportunities to get things very inexpensively. So you might get that kind of question, but when you can get your core number down lower than about $10 or $15, lower than $10 is a very, very easy yes for an awful lot of people. So then once you've found that, then you start looking at multiples of it to provide people choices of how much they want to give. Okay. I'm throwing a ton at you. I know. Let's look at another example and see if this is helpful. So let's think again about different units of service so that you can identify the smallest piece of your program. For most everybody, it's going to be one something per one person or one family. So if your organization provides tutoring, after school programs, even arts organizations, then it might be one day of care, one lesson, or one experience. That also could be one art class, one something else. Food pantries, soup kitchens, it's usually one meal for one person. If you have a private school, then it could be one class per student or one day of education per student. I've seen organizations that provide counseling, tutoring, and so forth that get kind of stuck on that because it winds up being like a NESA's 2,000 per student, which maybe that is what it is. Never be shy or embarrassed what your number is. Just look and see if there's a way to chunk it down. 2,000 per student, that is what it is. And if it costs that to provide education and change something for someone, that just is what it is. Just see if you can chunk it down a little bit. Like maybe how much is that per day? How many days of education does $2,000 provide? Boom, Anessa says $12 a day. Now we're talking. Now people are going to want to cover that. And what you can do then is when you ask for support on Giving Tuesday, you say for $12, you can provide a day's worth of education for a student. And it's this much a week, it's this much a month, or if you want to completely cover a student for the year, it's $2,000. Now, what happens is you have people shopping. They are no longer deciding, am I going to give or not? They're looking for which one they want to click on. Isn't that cool? It's so cool. Now, nothing is vague, nothing is boring. You've pulled people right in because they know exactly how their donation is going to make a difference. And you've attracted them emotionally. You're inspiring them. They're going to be more likely to give to your campaign than the next one they see, which just says, our goal is $10,000. Please give. And I'm stunned how many people think that just because they're a nonprofit and they have a goal, that people are going to give. Now, the truth is, loyal donors will give even when your ask is bad. But if you want to stand out from everybody else, you need a very, very good, compelling, emotion rich, heart tugging ask. And a core number will absolutely help you do that. All right. So, what you have to do then is you go find out what were your expenses for the 12 months that you want to use, whether that's 12 months in the past, or you want to use last calendar year or last fiscal year. Either will, any of that will work. It's totally fine. Then you figure out what your unit of service is and you go figure out how many of those you had. Now, here's an interesting piece. If you can't get your hands on either of those numbers, you've got a problem. You've either got an issue with the way you're tracking expenses or the way that you're tracking your service delivery. And that'll give you a clue about some places you might want to work on in the coming year. Yeah. So let's see if you can get your hands on those quickly. Now, sometimes I run across people who say, "Ooh, I can ballpark that, but I can't get exact." If you can get a ballpark that you would feel confident explaining to a donor if they ask, I'm okay with that too. If you say, I'm pretty sure it was this much per person or per animal per month, and so we multiply that times 12 months, I'm okay with that. As long as you can explain to a donor how you got that estimate, it's going to be okay. All right. You with me so far? Is a lot of numbers. All right, Vanessa's. You guys, this is great. Y'all are popping right in here. Core numbers for Giving Tuesday to fund student technology, $9.07. Love it. 1 hour of Chromebook use for a high school student. 1881, 1 hour of iPad. Perfect. Now, Vanessa, the next thing that I want you to do with that is to translate what that means. Okay. So 1 hour of Chromebook use for a high school student. Okay, we get that. Love 907. That's a great number. What does that help the student learn? How does that change that student's life? So take that next step because you'll want to use that in your Giving Tuesday campaign too, and the sky will be the limit. Um, yeah. Isn't this fun? I love it. Christina, thank you. Yeah, Tiffany, $15 to supply one cat with 30 days of emergency food. Okay, so there's something that I want to share. It's coming up in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and share this with you now. Okay, so notice how, let me back up in the chat. Okay, Vanessa had $9.07. How many of you are wondering, why don't you just round it to $9? I'm sure there are some people going, why don't you just round that? There's a piece of psychology at play here. You don't want to round it. You want to leave it 907 because the 907 instantly makes the donor have more trust. It makes them think, you know your numbers. You've actually calculated that. Wow. $9 even isn't the same. Yeah, Laura, you're welcome. I knew there would be somebody going like, well, how don't you just round that? So $15 for a cat impacted by the hurricane, that's good, Tiffany. If it's $14.87, I would like that better because it's more believable and it subliminally builds trust. Again, because the donor's going to go, whoa, you know your numbers. This is great. Donors want to give to nonprofits that they can trust. And I don't know why this is. I just know that it is, that this will subliminally build trust. Okay. This is great. All right, let me go on because there's some more really cool stuff coming and we're going to keep answering questions as we go. Jocelyn, I've got your answer coming up here in just a minute. Okay, here's some example core numbers. And these are actually all from clients that I've worked with. $6.20 a day to feed, shelter, and care for a dog. That's a Humane Society in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. $1.87 for a hot meal for a homeless person. That's Knox Area Rescue Ministries. $35.01 a month for education to lift a girl in India out of poverty. That's from Illuminate India. So you see, those all are very specific numbers. They're not a rounded number. So there's a piece of, oh, they know what they're doing there. And we can connect the dots for the donor because we can tell them exactly how that money is going to make a difference. And donors love that. Donors don't like giving into a black hole. And when you say, hey, our goal is $10,000, you're going to have people scratching their head wondering, how's my donation going to be used? What actually is going to happen to my money? When you use the core number, they know immediately because you've told them. Now, some of you may also be thinking, well, wait a minute. If we say 620 a day to feed, shelter, and care for a dog, doesn't that make that money restricted? Well, it does, except for the way we calculate this. Remember, I told you, you get all of your expenses. So direct cost, indirect cost, everything, every penny that you spend during the year goes into the calculation because it takes every penny to make your organization run. You can't deliver programs and services if your organization isn't running. And when you use this bigger picture of to feed, shelter, and care for a dog, if your organization is an animal shelter, that means that you can use the donation for whatever it takes to help shelter, feed, and care for a dog. That's going to include keeping the lights on and keeping the electricity so that the building stays heated and cooled, or providing staff who are actually going to feed the animals or whatever it takes. Okay. So it's a little bit restricted, but not really because of the way we calculate it. All right, here's another example. This one is a food pantry. So remember, we start with the total expenses. We divide the total units of service to figure out the core number. So in this case, total expenses was 150,000. Now I'm using some ballpark numbers here just to make the math easier for you guys. Okay. All right, let's say an estimated total food boxes given out was 14,500. So we just divide those numbers, $10.34 per food box. Now we can say on Giving Tuesday, your gift of $10.34 is going to provide an emergency food box to a family in need in our community. So again, it's not black hole fundraising. We're not throwing money into, we don't know where it's going. We know that we're feeding a family for $10.34, which is pretty cool. We like it. We like it. We love it. Okay, here's another example. I wanted to try to provide several different kinds of examples because I know that I know our audience is from all different kinds of organizations. So here's one for camp scholarships. This could be any kind of camp. I actually did this with Girl Scouts for camp scholarships several years ago. So total expenses, 240,000, number of campers, 940. Each camper attends camp for 5 days. So we can take 940 times 5 equals 4,700. So we divide our total expenses of 240,000 by 4,700, which is the number of days of camp. And we get 5,106 per day per camper. Okay, now we can use that. And we can say your gift of 5,106 is going to provide a life-changing day of camp for a young person in our community. So it's not just a day of camp. We got to also tell people how camp is going to change that kid's life, which is not really hard to do. Most of us can remember going to camp and like what a cool time it was and different skills we developed or how much more confident we were, et cetera, et cetera. All right, y'all catching on to this? Cool. All right, I want to go back to Jocelyn's question because this one pops up a lot when I'm talking about core number, and that is, okay, we have very different programs. How does this work? So her organization has foster care, early intervention, behavioral health counseling. They're all funded through government contracts, so they're all different rates. Might have to ballpark get average rate of service. Yeah. So, Jocelyn, here's what I would do in that case. Um, you could actually do this one of two ways. You could either go ahead and look for the commonality among those programs, or and calculate your core number that way, or you could do them separate. If you're fundraising separately for those programs, it's going to be helpful to have a separate core number. And that requires you to do a little bit more math to figure out, especially with overhead kind of costs, how do you allocate those to programs? Which is not the easiest thing to do, but it can be done. So you can do it either of those ways, like back up and look at foster care, early intervention, and behavioral health counseling is all about interaction with a youth or a child, right? So you'd have to think about, do you want to calculate that by the hour? Because you could, or by the day, could do it that way. I'd be kind of curious and try to calculate it a couple of different ways and see what the numbers come up to. Now, I've got a client who is a child advocacy center. And one of the things that they were trying to figure out was, how do you talk about this when your core number is kind of high? Like theirs is 51 something. I want to say 5136, something like that, to provide an hour of therapy for a child. And they said, gosh, that seems kind of high. What do we do about that? I said, you educate people about how much change can happen in an hour and the difference that it makes in a child's life, and that you may be giving that child coping tools they need that they will carry with them the rest of their life. And is that worth $51.36? The answer is yes. So it's really about how you position that number. It's better if it's 10 or $15 or less, but for anybody who calculates theirs and it comes up $50, $100, whatever, as long as you can explain why that's important and how it's going to be life changing, it's fine. It's fine. I've done that sort of thing before. Okay. Let's see, where did we get to here? Let me check my notes real quick. All right, let me answer another question and then we're going to look at some examples. All right, Christina's organization is harder to calculate. We provide a program at a school, 200 students a year, and two large community events, Talent Expo and Summer Resource Event. Okay. Yeah. So again, Christina, you think about, what do you have in common? What do all these things have in common? I would look at 1 hour per one person, calculate it that way and see what you get. Because a program at a school, you're going to be able to calculate the number of hours for that. Community events, you could figure that out even if you had to estimate it. So if it's 100, 150 people, about how many hours are they there? 1, 3, 6, whatever that is. And then summer camp scholarships, I would look at it 1 hour per person, calculate the whole thing, see what you've got. And then I would also look at it per program, because your summer camp, I've done this before. I've raised money for Girl Scout camp scholarships. And the way we did it was to calculate how much per girl for the like a week and how much per girl per day. Really, we boiled it all the way down per day and then built it back up to a week or a month or how long the girls were going to stay. And that worked really, really well, especially when we targeted alumni and said, you remember how much fun Girl Scout camp is and how much it changed your life. And now we're going to ask you to give that gift to another girl. $51 and whatever it was. And we were off to the races, which was very cool. Okie doke. Uh, all right, you guys are awesome. Okay. Oh my gosh, I hope I'm saying your name right. Love on it is asking, okay, how does this work for an organization that does not provide direct services? Great question. I helped an advocacy group figure out this once. Here's what we figured. You have to look at what your organization does. So your nonprofit exists to do something, to make a difference in the world. So you have to get really clear about what is the thing you're doing. In terms of advocacy, we were trying to change laws, but we did that by reaching people. So we figured out that it was really about how many people we could reach with a message to try to change opinions and build that groundswell. for advocacy. And this was an organization in North Carolina that was all about making streets safe for pedestrians and bikers. And so we had a program for teaching kids bike safety and um, getting sidewalks, like getting the city to install sidewalks, places, and things like that. So we really went more for um, obviously results, but how many people can we reach? Because we knew that the more people we could reach, the more we could impact those laws and get things done. So you have to think about the impact. So not necessarily the result that your organization gets, but the impact of that. What do I mean by that? Well, in this case, the thing that they might be doing is outreach. Maybe they're out knocking on doors or they're sending out flyers or they're trying to get on the news. So those are things we could measure, but that's not the important thing. The important thing was how many people are we reaching and how many opinions are we changing? You can calculate stuff like that with surveys and stuff like that. All right. Let me go on and I'll come back and answer some more questions because you guys are on it. Okay, I want to show you some examples of how this starts to work. How do you use this core number in your messaging for Giving Tuesday? So this is Brazos Sport Care's Food Pantry. I love this campaign from last year. Kids can't learn on an empty stomach. That's what I call a six-ish word headline that you use to kind of carry your whole Giving Tuesday campaign. Don't let Keela go home hungry. She's one of just 16,000 kids in our community who will face this weekend knowing there's nothing to eat at home. For $4.40, you can send Keela home with a backpack of nutritious, kid-friendly food to get her through this weekend. Keela and hundreds more need your help right now. Please don't delay. She needs your help today. Are you going to give to that campaign? Pretty sure you are. So that's the success of that campaign is about the image, the headline, but then the 440 just brings it home of like, whoo, that's an easy yes, I'm going to give to that campaign. All right, here's another one from Ronchar Ranch. Their campaign was about pain meds for older horses. This is a horse rescue. And their six-ish word headline was provide a pain-free life one day at a time. And so they talked about several different horses and what their issues are. Every resident at Ronchar Ranch Draft Horse Rescue suffers from chronic pain that is only eased by their daily medication. The critical treatments cost $42.11 daily and ensure that Ellie, Apollo, Louie, and Abe are pain-free. Look at the button. So this is from an email. The button says, yes, I'm going to provide a pain-free life one day at a time. It's not donate now. They pulled that button right back to what the campaign was. Guess what? Guess what happened with this campaign? This was last year. It went over goal, no big surprise. And the average donation size was above $42. So that tells me that people in their donor base didn't have any problem with giving $42.11. Was really well done. All righty. Whoops. Okay, here's another one. This is, oh gosh, what is the name of this organization? I'll think of it in about 5 minutes. This is an organization that does intervention with churches that are struggling. And so there's a couple of things about this. One is this is a pre-Giving Tuesday email. You see that at the top, one day until Giving Tuesday. The email itself is kind of long. I would have broken that up a little bit because we all just don't read anymore where we won't do that. But if I skip all of that and I'll go right down to the image at the bottom, got it. There's my core number. $21 intervenes in a church for one day, 147 intervenes in a church for 1 week, 7,560 intervenes in a church for 1 year. P.S. All donations up to $4,000 will be matched. I don't have to read all that stuff because that image just gave me what I needed to know. By the way, we call that a 3-bubble image where you're getting people shopping. It's not a yes, am I going to give or no, I'm not, but here's my choices. I would have done a few things different with this, but I wanted you to see this, that the image using the core number is very powerful and can help people make that decision even that they don't read all of the text. Here's another one that probably gets even a little worse, if you will, as far as not being pretty. And I will encourage you to make your stuff pretty, whether it's an email, it's a social post, it does need to be pretty. But what I wanted you to see here is the second paragraph where it says at Hospitality House, we have a goal of raising 2,000 and just $24. There we go with a little bit of an arbitrary goal, but then they jump right down and give us choices. 1668 provides snacks, 2556 can provide coffee for a month and so forth. So this is it's kind of like a Ronald McDonald House. Now, I would pretty this up a little bit. I would probably change that image at the top from a Giving Tuesday logo to a picture that's more representative of their organization. But I wanted you to see that that is another way you can format is to almost use these in bullets. Now, what I like is that the first two are those weird numbers, and then they go right into rounded numbers. I'm scratching my head going, wow, I think I would have continued on with it. But at least we've got choices here and we're not stuck in a um in that black hole fundraising of wondering like how's a donation going to make a difference. So yay. And this email gives a nice piece of gratitude to their sponsor. All right, how about another example? Oh, this is one of my favorites. This is called Rejoice Ballet. They're in Nashville. They provide ballet lessons and everything that goes with it for children who otherwise could never afford it. And I think it's a wonderful program. Love the image, help students step up to the bar with confidence. It's a pretty short email, and I love that they've put the choices, the giving choices in that bulleted list because I can see those really quickly. But I want you to notice the difference. So we've been looking at numbers that are true core numbers that have the weird numbers. Now look at how this feels when it's rounded. $20 provides a child with new shoes. Great. And so we're talking about ballet shoes. $50 provides a new complete ballet uniform. 100 provides a brand new costume. All right, good. That's really good. That would be a little stronger if it was $20.15, $50.96. You see how that works? The weird number is just a little more believable. But what a sweet campaign. And I know they did really well with this campaign last year. All right, almost to the end of the content, and then we'll circle back and answer some more questions. Um, I usually get asked this question somewhere along the way, and that is, do we really include all expenses when we're calculating core number? And the answer is yes. Yeah, you basically can go find your financials from the last 12 months or the last year, whichever way you want to do it, and you just get the bottom line expense number because the truth is you didn't spend any money unnecessarily. Every penny was spent on something that was very important. This includes everything. So don't try to do this just with direct costs. You got to include your indirect costs as well. And it can get a little complicated, as we talked about earlier, when you have a mix of different programs, like Christina was saying, where you've got some direct programs, indirect programs, all different kinds of things going on. You got to get a little creative with this sometimes. And sometimes you back up and find the commonality among programs, and sometimes you just go ahead and calculate it per program. This also gets a little hard if you have a fiscal sponsor. So if your organization is under the umbrella of someone else, again, we have to think about costs and which ones to include, which ones not to include, and so forth. So that can get a little tricky as well. Also gets a little tricky if your nonprofit is new and you're in the first, let's say, 3 years of organization. Maybe you don't even have program numbers yet that you can really count on. It's okay to do some projections if that's you. So if you've got a nonprofit that's new, you're just getting started, it's okay to say, we expect to spend $6.52 a day to take care of a homeless dog or cat. It's okay to say that. You're being honest. And again, as long as you can show a donor how you've calculated that number, you are fine. You are good to go. Okay, let's answer a couple of questions. And then we'll talk a little bit more because I have 2 resources for you that I think you're going to love. Okay, let's see. Do, 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 do. Yes. Katie, yes. You include your fundraising costs into the total organization expenses. Yes. Because it costs money to raise money. Okay. Admin salaries. Yes, Travis. Absolutely every penny you spend on the organization gets counted into these calculations. Levante, thank you. All right. Okay, Alex got a good question. How can this be adapted to social services organization committed to community-centric fundraising principles? Um, yeah, I get that. I get that. And here's what I know. I also hate boiling this down to something that can feel pretty icky to a program participant. But what I know is if we can explain to a donor how their donation is going to make a difference, they are much more likely to hit the donate button and give. So it might be a matter of how you word it, how you describe it. It might be a matter of saying cost, what it costs to provide an emergency food box is this. Those are facts, and we can't change those facts. So it might just be in the matter of how you present it a little bit. I would encourage you to get curious. I would encourage you to go look for samples from similar organizations in other parts of the country, see how they talk about it, because that might give you some ideas. Okay, want some resources? Yeah. I know that not everybody is great with math, so we actually created a core number calculator and put it on our website. Here's the link. You plug in your total expenses for the year, you plug in your unit of service, it's going to calculate it, and then it's also going to tell you this is great, or see if there's a way to chunk this down a little bit. So it's going to give you some suggestions as well. It's a pretty cool little tool. So you can grab that link on the page, and that'll help. Thank you, Jenna. Jenna's just dropped that in. Leah, with providing trainings, I would divide by the number of not just the trainings, but I would drill into like 1 hour per person, because it's going to get you a more accurate and probably a lower core number when you do it that way. Okay, here's the other thing. I love Giving Tuesday. I know people say, "Oh, it's like nonprofit Hunger Games," which just makes me laugh. I think people who poo-poo Giving Tuesday do that because they don't know how to do it right. They don't know how to plan and get strategic. They don't know how to use core number. They don't know how to use their technology like CauseVox, which is a very cool tool. And so we are offering a Giving Tuesday crash course from my organization, Giving Tuesday. It is free. So if you have any interest, Rob, isn't that funny? Giving Tuesday crash course, it runs November 4th through 9th. It'll take you about 10, 15 minutes a day. Watch a video, download the handouts, and it'll walk you right through and give you more examples. So if you've enjoyed the examples you've seen today, I've got so many more I can share with you. You can go to getfullyfunded.com/causevox and sign up. It's free. So you got nothing to lose. Oh my gosh, and I'm 2 minutes early. I ended 2 minutes ahead. Whoop, whoop.
Wow. Thank
I
you
know,
so
right?
much, Sandy, for this wonderful and informative session and for walking me and our community through just the psychology behind, what a donor sees and how they're motivated to give when they see that number on a donation form. This has been amazing. And thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.